All right, good morning, everybody. It is Thursday morning. It is time for our latest installment of what we call Java with Jay. For those of you who are new to the program, it's a program that we try to put together on a somewhat regular basis that address things that have come up from time to time in the law firm, and we push them out during a Java with Jay session to try to get them out there in a manner that's a little bit more timely. And these are usually topics that we find appeal to a lot of folks. It's one of those, if you have a question, somebody else might have a question. And the way we do the sessions is they are designed to be about a half hour long. We sort of refer to it with Java with Jay as it's about as long as it would take to finish one cup of coffee. That's the idea. So that way everybody can get on with their day and go ahead and do whatever they need to do. So with that being said, we'll move on to the topic. So today's topic is about planning for grandchildren that might have some special needs. And so what are we referring to and why are we referring to that? So we see quite often here at the firm, grandparents who come in and for all the right reasons and for all the obvious reasons, want to leave some bequests or they want to leave some money to grandchildren. And they're looking to do it because obviously grandparents love their grandkids in most cases, right? So they want to leave some money to their grandchildren, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. And then that situation can be made a little more complicated when you're talking about doing it for grandkids who might have some special needs, whether it's they're on the autism spectrum or they have Down syndrome or something that we think at some point down the road might cause some need for eligibility for certain benefits. And in some cases, having money, having assets, or being left money or assets creates a problem and makes people ineligible for those benefits. So what we're talking about is leaving money to a grandchild through what we've commonly referred to as a special needs trust. Now, why are we talking about that? Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, in many cases, if parents, if there are grandkids that are on a particular health path, for example, because they've got some health challenges and they'll qualify for certain benefits. Some of those benefits are sort of means tested, and some of those benefits are really important. In many cases, for some kids who have some real challenges, one of the biggest benefits that they may get is a Medicaid benefit that would cover the cost of healthcare or some health issues and some health challenges that might come up down the road. And so to qualify for these benefits, then you have to obviously manage the assets that the folks, that the person who's applying for these benefits might have. And so if folks are trying to leave money to kids, you may be, in many cases, creating a position or a situation of ineligibility by leaving money to a kid directly. And so what we'll try to do is, or what we'll try to suggest to people is, if you're trying to leave money to grandchildren, and the grandchildren have certain special needs, if you will, you would prefer, or the preference is, to leave that money to them in a special needs trust. Now, why do you do that? What does that mean? Well, what that means is if you're leaving money to a child that has these types of special needs and you leave it to them in a special needs trust, in many cases, they will be allowed to continue their eligibility on some of these programs, on some of these benefits. Again, in many cases, it's Medicaid, and then be able to use the money, use the assets that you may have left to supplement or improve the care that they're getting in some way, shape, or form through these Medicaid benefits. They may be getting benefits through a group home. They may be getting medical benefits. They may have medical needs that would just be too expensive, too costly to be provided outside of the Medicaid program. So we're leaving money to children, to grandchildren in a special needs trust so that those benefits are retained, and the money that the grandchild gets, they're able to keep that money and use that to cover things that Medicaid doesn't cover. Medicaid covers a lot of things, but it also doesn't cover a lot of things. And so the special needs trust is designed to be the catch-all for where these monies would go so that the benefits that they would get don't get interrupted or don't end because they've received money from your estate. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. You as the grandparent, you could set the special needs trust up yourself. You could set up your own special needs trust, as part of your estate planning, or set up a special needs trust as part of your estate planning to benefit your grandchild. These are what we call third-party special needs trusts. What that means is they're not set up by the grandchild. They're set up by you. You're a third party. And by setting up this special needs trust, you could then say, look, I want my estate to be split these ways. I want the money to go to my kids. I want the money to go to my other grandkids. But any money that would go to grandchild A, who might be the one that might have the special needs issues, any money that would go to grandchild A, we'll call him Adam. Any money that would go to grandchild A, Adam, who's the special needs grandchild, goes to them through this trust. And then we have to pick somebody to basically babysit the money and pay the money out to Adam for things that don't get covered by Medicaid. So that's what, in many cases, we'll do for a client. We'll say, look, if you want to leave money to all your grandchildren, but one of your grandchildren has these special needs issues and you want them to get some money out of your estate, we're going to leave it to them through this special needs trust. We create the trust. You would decide as part of your bequest in your estate plan how much money you were going to leave to the special needs trust. And then we pick somebody, maybe it's Adam's parents, maybe it's somebody else, who's going to be in charge of basically babysitting that money and using that money to improve the quality of life for Adam, to cover things that Medicaid wouldn't cover. Cable TV bills, a cell phone bill, buy him a new iPhone, buy him a flat screen TV, buy him things that are quality of life enhancers that Medicaid just doesn't cover. So again, remember what you're doing is you're saying, look, I'm doing this little carve out. I want to leave money to Adam. Adam has special needs. I don't want Adam to get the money directly because that would create a problem for Adam's benefits. So I'm going to create, as part of my estate plan, a special needs trust for the benefit of Adam. And then because you're the one setting up the trust, you get to decide, if something happened to Adam, where do I want that money to go, right? And that money could go back to your other grandchildren if that's what the plan is. But you would get to decide that. You kind of set up the rules, you set up the parameters. This is what I want to have happen. Adam's money is to be used for Adam while he's alive, used to help him support his lifestyle, improve his quality of life, doesn't kick him off any benefits that he may be getting. And then if something ever happens to him, and the reason that may be a thing, if you will, the reason that might be an issue is because many kids, if they have some special needs, their health might be a little bit more compromised, and then their quality of life is improved by the money that you might leave behind in a special needs trust, but their life expectancy might be a little bit lower because of their health issues. So because those health issues factor into our planning, we want to have a consideration that we can kind of qualify. If something happens to Adam in this case, where does the money go? And you get to decide that. The money could go to Adam's parents. The money could go to a charity that supports maybe the condition that Adam might have been dealing with over the course of his lifetime. The money could go back to other family members. You get to choose that if you want to choose that. Again, we call those third-party special needs trust. What that means is that the money doesn't go to the state. The money never goes back to the state. You're the one who calls the shots as to where the money should go. So that's a situation where you would be setting up your own special needs trust as part of your estate plan. Now, if your children, who are Adam's parents in this example, if they've done their estate plan, they may have already done this, right? They may have already set up a special needs trust for Adam's benefit as part of their own estate plan, right? We have clients that come in all the time. They tell us that one of their children has special needs, and they go through the same exercise, right? They say to themselves, look, my kid is on these benefits. We're getting these benefits through Medicaid, for example, and I have other kids and I want to distribute my estate across all my kids, but I don't want the money that I would leave to my son, your grandchild, Adam. I don't want that money to do the same thing that would happen if you left them the money as a grandparent. I don't want this to mess up the benefits that they're getting if they inherit part of mom and dad's estate. So they may have already done this, right? Adam's parents may have said, you know what, mom and dad, we actually have done the estate planning. We actually have set up a trust for for the benefit of all of our kids. Adam, obviously one of our kids. And then we've done a carve out so that Adam's share of the money goes to his trust to be used for improving his quality of life. The money would be sitting in the trust. We've figured out and identified who the trustees would be going forward. And then this money is going to be used to improve his quality of life. And then if something ever happens, we have indicated this is where we would want any money left over to go to. The answer might be that that money would go to Adam's siblings if something ever happened to him. But while Adam's with us and while he's able to do whatever he's going to do in terms of living his life, this money is there to improve his quality of life and to handle those things. So then what you could do as part of building your own estate plan is to say, look, any bequest that we would normally make that would go outright to Adam, we're just going to loop that into his parents' special needs trust that they've already set up for him. And it works the same exact way. It's a special needs trust that he set up, or that his parents set up for his benefit. So they are considered a third party. They're setting up a special needs trust for the benefit of Adam. And then they get to choose, if something were to happen to Adam, where do we want any leftover funds to go? So you could both use that special needs trust as a way to fund this benefit so that Adam can still continue to benefit from your generosity, from any bequest that you might leave as part of your estate. And then also those benefits that any monies left over as part of that would go to whoever you, or in this case, this is the second case, whoever you leave money to through that trust that's already been identified by Adam's parents. So again, the idea here is you're not leaving money directly to an individual who's getting benefits or who might qualify for benefits. You're leaving it to a trust for the benefit of that person. And that money is kind of segregated or separate, doesn't get included when we start adding up the possibility of somebody having resources that may or may not affect or kick them off either medical benefits that they might be getting, or they might be getting a Social Security benefit, SSI, for example. It doesn't affect those types of benefits. So it's kind of the cake and eat it too, best of both worlds. You know, they've got access to a pool of money that's been set aside for them, and then they're still able to get benefits that are designed to help and improve their quality of life. So again, it's set up your own special needs trust. It's potentially piggyback off of a special needs trust that may have been set up by your own children to benefit your grandchild. And then the third option is you could effectively just leave that money directly to, in this case, Adam's parents, and say to Adam's parents, look, we were going to leave money to Adam like we did for all the grandkids, but we don't want to do that. We don't want to leave money for him. We don't want to create a problem. We don't want to create an issue. So instead, we're going to leave either a larger bequest to you, or we're going to adjust the distribution of our estate in such a way that the money that would normally have gone to Adam, like we're passing it out or parceling it out to all the other grandkids, we're just going to have this money go to you guys. And then you guys effectively have to kind of pinky promise that you're going to use that money for Adam's benefit. And you guys can set that up however you would want to set that up, right? So for example, you know, maybe that money gets distributed or gets left to your kids with the understanding that they're going to make sure that that money gets used for Adam's benefit. It's not in a special needs trust. It's not in anything other than the parent's name. And then the parents might go ahead and say, well, look, you know, mom and dad left us an extra $100,000. That money is designed to go to Adam and to use for the things that Adam may or may not need. And they may just put that in a separate account, and that money just be identified by, you know, it's in a Fidelity account, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. We know that that's really Adam's money, and anything that we need to pull off of to do things for Adam, we just take it out of that account, right? So it kind of operates like a trust. It's separate money. And then they're just going to agree to do what they think is the right thing to do. And that can work. You know, we see that, you know, a fair amount. That can work, especially if you're not talking about leaving substantial sums of money, you know, 10,000, 20,000, you know, that can work. The downside of doing that is everything in terms of how that money is used is predicated on that promise that I will use this for the benefit of Adam, which means there's really nothing to hold them to it. If for some reason they decide, hey, look, mom and dad left this money for Adam, but we think using that money for a cruise is a way better to spend that money, then there's no real way to control that because you left the money to them. And again, it was all based on a promise. If the understanding is that if something ever happened to Adam, that they would spread that money across all of your grandkids, well, again, there's nothing in place that says that. There's nothing that segregates out that distribution scheme to say, look, if something ever happened to Adam, I want this to go to all my other surviving grandkids. That they again, it's all based on the promise. They have to agree to do that. The other thing is you put that money at risk of things like bankruptcy issues or creditor issues. If they have problems, that money is not segregated. It's in a separate Fidelity account, but it's not in a trust. It doesn't have a trust wrapper around it. So it's just money that's available for any of the personal issues or liabilities that your kids potentially have. And then the other thing is if the parents get divorced, for example, that money is up for grabs. If you left $100,000 extra to your son, for example, with the idea that he was going to use that money for Adam, and then him and his wife get divorced, his wife's divorce attorney is going to say, you have $100,000 in that Fidelity account. That's supposed to be, up for grabs as part of this divorce proceeding. And, it's a divorce, right? Things are getting contentious. Your son might say, hey, I thought we agreed that was going to be Adam's money. Your wife might say, or his soon-to-be ex-wife might say, well, that's fine, but I'm not going to leave it all with you. Give me 50, I'll give you 50, and then we'll both babysit that money equally. And whether she agrees to do that, whether she does that, whether he does that, we have no idea. But there's no wrapper on that lets that work that way. You're really relying on a promise that they're going to do that. So it can work. I'm not saying it can't work. Those are the challenges of doing it that way. So we've talked about 3 ways to leave money to grandchildren who may or may not have who may have some special needs. One is through a special needs trust that you set up as part of your estate plan. One of them is a special needs trust that maybe your kids have set up for their child who might have special needs, and you're leaving it directly to that trust. So you're kind of consolidating everything into the one trust. The third option is you're just leaving it to the parents outright, hoping that they will do the right thing for the grandchild and that they're going to do something like that. And all of those approaches, putting the money together that way, what that does is that puts you in a position or puts somebody in a position to be able to say, I'm leaving the money for this grandchild, and if something ever happens to that grandchild, this is where I want the money to go after the fact. So the state never comes back in because these are what we call third-party special needs trusts. Now, what if you don't do any of these things? What if something happens out of the blue, you don't really think it through all the way, and you end up inadvertently leaving money to somebody who's getting some benefits, and the risk is that by inheriting the money that you left them, with the understanding that you thought you were doing a great thing, but it ended up becoming a little bit of a problem, what could possibly happen? Well, in many cases, there are a couple of solutions. One solution is they take the money, they give up the benefits, they use the money the way they would just choose to use the money, and if they spend all the money, then they turn around and they reapply for the benefits. That can be a hassle, and that can be a headache, and a lot of folks might say, we jump through a ton of hoops just to qualify for the benefits, and we don't want to potentially give up those benefits because something catastrophic could happen that could really create a problem. What we would rather do is try to keep the benefits. So what the solution might be in a situation like that is for the person who inherits the money to go out and take the money that you generously, kindly left them, and to use that money to set up their own special needs trust, right? Which they can do. Now, here's the difference. It would work the same way. For the most part, the money that they put into their special needs trust would allow them to continue getting the benefits. But the big difference would be if at some point down the road, something were to happen to them, and God forbid they pass away, Medicaid is first in line to say, we paid money towards your benefits, pay us back first, and then that money can go wherever the person who set up the trust wanted it to go. So remember, We talked early on, the beginning of this presentation, about you setting up the trust and you having the ability to control where the money went after somebody passed away, and it did not go through Medicaid. If somebody inherits money and getting that money creates a problem for benefits that they may be getting, they do have the option of setting up their own special needs trust. But in many cases, when they set up their own special needs trust, if something happens to them, Medicaid takes the position, hey, we let you keep the money, we let you use the money, but if you pass away, we are first in line. We have been keeping track of what we spent on your care, and we will present you or present your trustee with a bill that says, this is how much money we paid towards your care. This is how much money you owe us. Pay us back first if there's enough money left over. If there's not enough money left over, Medicaid will take whatever is left over, but pay us back first. And then, and only then, if there's money left over, is there something that can be paid out to whoever, in this case, Adam wants the money to go to, because he's the one who set up the special needs trust. So remember, when you're leaving money to grandchildren, or if you'd like to leave money to grandchildren, or if you're planning to leave money to grandchildren, if there's a need for that money to be left to them in a way that allows them to keep their benefits by leaving it to a special needs trust, you're better off getting in front of that planning idea sooner rather than later. We do see a fair amount of situations where people just somehow inadvertently end up becoming beneficiaries of an estate, and they're getting some benefits. They're getting something that the loss of that benefit is going to create a real problem or could create a real hardship. And in many cases, they're not inheriting millions of dollars. We're not talking about lots of money that creates a problem. In many cases, it might be a 1/3 interest in a house, for example. And here in New England, house goes for $500,000, $600,000, after potentially mortgages and bills and payments, somebody might end up getting, $500,000 or $400,000 that the house sells for, and then they're in for 1/3 of that or half of that. So it's $100,000, it's $200,000. It's not enough to be life altering. In many cases, you can't even go out and buy a place because your income, if you're on some of these benefit programs, isn't really enough of an income to support the purchase of a place, right? So buying a place isn't really in the cards. You're just going to get a lump sum of cash that is helpful, but if it was distributed to you through a special needs trust where you could kind of control how the money comes out and then still keep some of these other benefits, it becomes a better deal. The money is much, much more impactful than getting the money and then saying, well, I'm going to spend it all in a year. Let's give up my benefits and then reapply in a year from now. It's just a form over function. It becomes a real hassle to do something like that. And the better approach to this might be just a case where you say, look, you know what, if this money goes into a special needs trust, it's going to have a huge impact on my life. I keep all my benefits and I get to continue to live my life and do what I'm doing. And then this money really becomes a real leg up. So if that's your situation, give us a call at the office. We're happy to help out. 508-858-5324. Happy to discuss these issues with you. As always, we try to keep our sessions here to just about 10 o'clock. That's when we kind of wrap things up. So as we close in on that hour, again, if there's anything we can do for you here, please let us know. As always, we're happy to help out. We always love to talk to our clients, our prospective clients, to see what things that they have that we can help out with. Stay tuned here for more Java with Jays in the future. And if there's anything we can do for you, let us know. Hope everybody has a great day and look forward to talking and seeing everybody soon. Take care.